So I wanted to make a quick little comparison between Samsung OLED screens and iPhone OLED screens. Now, I will tell you, it's kind of like a preference as of this point. These two phones are probably the most comparable I could find. I could have probably done an iPhone 13, but there's a lot of advantages for both these devices. Now, one big thing to keep in mind, which is kind of like a mind twisting thing, Samsung actually makes a lot of panels for Apple. Now, I don't know if they might have done the iPhone 13 Pros, but I know they've done the iPhone 10s and a lot of other iPhones since then. So just because you're getting an iPhone doesn't mean you don't have Samsung parts internally. However, for the history of Samsung, I've had a great time with their panels. I think one great thing about Samsung panels is that they get very bright. They give you a little bit more flexibility with the color profile. So with iPhones, we have True Tone, but we can't really do a lot of warming of the panel or configuring of the panel itself. With Samsung, and one thing that I love about it is that you can actually go ahead and change the color profile if you really want to. So you can go down here and you can go and find the color profile icon wherever it is, and you can actually change a lot of different things within your specific panel, which is really nice. You also have this extra brightness toggle, which is really, really cool. And I guess you have a little bit more of dark mode. I guess you can just turn on unscheduled. But with something like the iPhones, for example, I feel like since the iPhone 13 Pro, this has probably been the best panel I love using. Now, Samsung, if we're just comparing the S22 to the iPhone 13 Pro, that's I would say the 13 Pro probably has a better panel. But if we were going to compare Samsung OLED panels, which is what wanting to do, versus iPhone OLED panels, Samsung gives you a little bit more flexibility with not only the display itself, but also with how you tune the display. So basically, you have the flipping phones, you have the folding phones from Samsung, but you also have the curved edge on a lot of Samsung phones. Now, what the curved edge is basically like with the S22 Ultra. I think the S21 Plus had a flat panel, but essentially with the S21 Ultra, S22 Ultra, we have a little curve on the sides. If you remember some like the Galaxy S10s, those one have curves as well, and those are really nice to have. If we're comparing these two, these are a flat panel, but that is something that I really do like as well. On top of that, with Samsung panels, they do pretty much give you the hole punch display, which is a really nice touch. With iPhones, we still have notches. It's going to get better throughout time. But the panel itself, I think, even though you're getting, the hole punch display, fingerprint sensor in the display on a Samsung phone, you are getting, I still think, a better looking panel from the iPhones. Now, I will also add, with the iPhone 13 Pro and with the iPhone 13 Pro Max, we now have ProMotion display. With ProMotion display, we basically have the ability of having that 120 hertz panel. Now, personally, I actually kind of do feel like a 120 hertz ProMotion display on something like an iPhone feels better overall than what we're getting on a Samsung. Now, this is kind of a double-edged sword because on one hand, Samsungs have had the ability of using 120 hertz for a few years now since the Galaxy S20 on their S lineup, and I think they've had a little bit of a runway, a little bit of a faster time. But I do feel like since iOS is already such a smooth software, and 120 hertz on a Samsung kind of feels like if the iPhones had 90 hertz. So now that the iPhones have 120 hertz, that is a really cool thing that we have on iPhones over Samsung. But another big thing to keep in mind is that with Samsungs, they've also had a longer period of time and more phones that use Android at a 120 hertz panel. The reason that's important is because a lot more applications I feel like on Android are consistently using 120 hertz all of the time. Right now, because ProMotion is pretty much new on iPhones, we've had it on iPads before, it still seems like it kind of switches from 120 hertz to 60 hertz constantly. And because of that, it kind of gives the impression it's not as bad because it's still a very smooth operating system. It's still very, very fast. iOS is already very smooth, but it would be nice if 120 hertz was clicked on all the time. And if it is, sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but it still feels like a very fast phone. Like I said, with Androids and with Samsungs, it kind of feels like it's mostly 120 hertz, but because they've had a longer runway and been using 120 hertz a little bit longer, I feel like this one is more configured with the display. On top of that, another really cool thing that we have on Samsung phones with the displays that we still don't have on iPhones is that always on display. Because these things have that 120 hertz panel, I think they can go down to as low as, I'm not too sure what the lowest hertz is, but I still think that is lower than what we're getting on the 13 Pro. So the always on display is really nice because we can go ahead and have this type of little thing right here, and I think you can have it persistent on or you can have it tapped on, but that's still a really cool thing that we have on Samsungs. iPhones still don't have that always on display, but that is still something that I think will get better throughout time. But ultimately, when it kind of comes down to it, I think the Samsung panel is probably the most configured just because it's been around for so much longer. I feel like the panels, themselves, if we're looking at all like the best Samsung phone like the S22 Ultra versus the best iPhone 13 Pro Max panel, I think the S22 Ultra probably wins. I think that's probably the better screen when it comes down to it in pretty much every single area. It has just everything you could ever imagine into a display. But I feel like the iPhones kind of look better. I feel like these ones pretty much give me the impression that this one is consistently a smooth panel, even though it clicks down to 60 hertz, I feel like all the time, and a lot more apps are not configured to 120 hertz. I feel like it's going to get better throughout time, and I feel like the display, when I'm looking at it without even touching it, I feel like the display looks better on the 13 Pro, even with viewing angles and everything considered. So that kind of covers it up for the most part. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video.